Oops, I forgot my card again. My daughter Sarah laughed as she pushed her luxury bill and her mother-in-law's toward me. The clerk behind the marble counter was already placing 3 designer bags into oversized matte black shopping totes. The digital display on the register glowed with a ridiculous number, nearly $2,000, for silk scarves, a leather clutch, and 2 bottles of imported perfume. None of it was for me. Beside Sarah stood Brenda, her husband's mother. Brenda gave me a complacent, tight-lipped smile, adjusting her cashmere wrap. She looked at me the way one looks at a reliable, slightly dim-witted personal ATM. Oh my goodness. I left my purse in David's car too, Brenda chimed in, feigning a soft gasp. We are just so scatterbrained today, aren't we? Both women turned their absolute expectant gazes on me. For the past 6 months, Sarah had been inviting me out for family bonding. Yet mysteriously, her wallet always vanished right when the check arrived. High-end brunches, spa afternoons, boutique runs, I had paid for all of it, hoping to maintain a peaceful relationship with my only daughter. I knew she wanted to impress her wealthy acting mother-in-law, but today, staring at that glowing screen, the dynamic shattered. I looked at the fine leather goods, then at Sarah's confident smile, waiting for me to pull out my black card. I didn't reach into my purse. Instead, I adjusted my coat and smiled back. How funny, I forgot mine, too, I replied in a smooth, pleasant tone. Her smile froze instantly. The color drained from Sarah's face while the young clerk shifted uncomfortably, looking between the 3 of us. What do you mean? Mom Sarah whispered, her sugary tone completely evaporating. You always carry your card. Well, not today. I turned my attention to Brenda. Since your purse is just out in the car, Brenda, you can easily go fetch it. I have a book club meeting in an hour and really must get going. Enjoy your new things, ladies. I turned on my heel and walked toward the glass exit doors. I didn't wait for a response, nor did I look back. Walking out into the crisp afternoon air felt remarkably light. The storm was coming, but this time I was the one controlling the weather. By the time I pulled my sedan into my driveway, my phone was practically vibrating off the passenger seat. There were 5 missed calls from Sarah and a barrage of furious text messages. I didn't open them. Instead, I carried my groceries inside, put the kettle on the stove for some black tea, and enjoyed the quiet hum of my kitchen. I knew exactly what had happened at that marble counter. Without my money to bail them out, Sarah and Brenda had faced the sheer humiliation of telling the clerk they couldn't actually afford the luxury items they had just spent an hour parading around the store. When my phone buzzed again this time, showing my son-in-law David's name, I finally answered. Audrey, what happened at the boutique? David sighed into the receiver. His voice carried the heavy exhaustion of a man who constantly put out the fires his wife started. Sarah is practically hysterical. They had to leave everything at the register. I didn't have my card, David, I answered, keeping my voice entirely level. Brenda said her purse was in your car. I assumed they would figure it out. They are coming over to talk to you, he warned softly. I hung up without another word. Taking my mug of tea, I walked into my living room. With the blinders finally off, I noticed the subtle, creeping invasion I had allowed into my home. A ridiculously expensive scented candle Sarah had left on my mantel. A heavy, overly modern throw blanket she draped over my armchair because my style was too dated. I walked down the hall to the guest bedroom. Opening the closet, I found 3 of Brenda's heavy winter coats and 2 large boxes of Sarah's out-of-season clothes. They were treating my home, the house my late husband and I worked 30 years to pay off, like their personal free storage unit. I went out to the garage, brought in 3 large cardboard boxes, and began packing. I didn't feel angry. I felt an absolute crystal-clear focus. I carefully folded the coats and tossed the accessories in. The slow, subtle takeover under the guise of family was ending today. I stacked the taped boxes neatly right by the front door. The next morning, I sat at my dining table with my laptop, a notepad, and a freshly brewed cup of coffee. It was time to look at the numbers. For years, I had kept a loose grip on certain shared expenses, assuming I was just helping my daughter get on her feet. But as I pulled up my bank statements and combed through the last 12 months, the reality was glaring. There was the emergency credit card I had given Sarah 2 years ago when David was between jobs. I clicked on the recent transaction history. Last month, a $300 charge at a premium wine shop. 2 weeks ago, a $500 charge at the exclusive tennis club Brenda frequented. I didn't call Sarah to argue. I simply clicked the Report Lost or Stolen tab, navigated to the authorized user settings, and permanently canceled the card. But I didn't stop there. I opened my family's cellular plan. Sarah and David's brand new smartphones were still on my account, racking up international data charges from a vacation they took to Mexico with Brenda last winter. I dialed my provider. Yes, I'd like to remove 2 lines from my account, I told the representative. Starting at the end of this billing cycle, they will need to assume their own contracts. It took exactly 10 minutes. They would receive an automated text message informing them of the transfer of billing responsibility. Next, I logged into my auto insurance portal. Sarah's SUV was still bundled under my policy to get her a multi-car discount, though I was paying the bulk of the premium. I removed her vehicle. Doing this wasn't an act of revenge. It was a simple return of responsibility. Passive dependency only breeds entitlement, and I was done funding an illusion. By the time I closed my laptop, I had freed up nearly $800 a month. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. I was finally cleaning house. At noon, the front door rattled. Sarah still had her old silver key on her ring. She swung the door open and marched into the entryway, stopping dead in her tracks when she nearly tripped over the 3 cardboard boxes stacked by the console table. David trailed in behind her, looking down at his shoes. "How could you embarrass me like that?" Sarah demanded, ignoring the boxes for a moment to glare at me. Her face was flushed. Brenda's friends were having lunch right next door to the boutique. She was humiliated. If she was humiliated, it was because she didn't know how to manage her own budget. I replied, remaining seated in my reading chair. "I prefer to keep the entryway clear." "Sarah, those boxes are yours, and Brenda's things, from my guest room. Please take them with you when you leave." Sarah stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Are you kicking my stuff out, Mom? What is wrong with you?" "My card got declined at the gas station this morning." "There's no error," I said, turning the page of the magazine on my lap. I closed the account. "You'll also be getting emails about your cell phones and the car insurance. It's time for you and David to manage your own household expenses." David rubbed the back of his neck, refusing to make eye contact with me. "All this over yesterday." Sarah scoffed, her voice pitching higher. "You had enough money in your checking account to buy that whole store, but you made me look like a fool. If you had money for a luxury perfume, you weren't completely helpless," I observed calmly. "The problem isn't the credit card, Sarah. The problem is that you treat your mother like a corporate sponsor for your mother-in-law's lifestyle." Sarah's face tightened. She opened her mouth to yell, but I held up a single finger. "You are in my house," I reminded her softly. "You will not raise your voice at me. Take your boxes, go home, and figure out your finances. The bank is officially closed." After Sarah and David left, hauling the boxes to their trunk in angry silence, I realized the situation was far from secured. Sarah had used her key to barge in today. She had held that key since she moved out for college. I knew my daughter. When her temper flared, she felt entitled to push boundaries. I also knew Brenda had been whispering in her ear, trying to figure out how to maintain access to my resources. As long as the physical key existed, my home wasn't truly mine. I didn't wait for the next unannounced visit. I immediately looked up a local security and locksmith company and requested a same-day appointment. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, a technician was drilling into my heavy oak front door. I didn't just ask for new cylinders. I had him install a heavy-duty smart lock on the front door and the side door leading into the garage. The sleek black panels required a fingerprint or a specific code entered from my smartphone. No physical keys at all for these models, ma'am, the technician explained, handing me the manual. Unless someone has your phone or your thumb, they aren't getting in. That is exactly what I want. I smiled, handing him my debit card to pay the invoice. While he finished up, I sat at my desk and logged into my postal service account. I rerouted all my sensitive mail bank statements, insurance renewals, medical documents to a private P.O. box I rented online just minutes before. Sarah had a habit of flipping through the mail on my kitchen counter when she came over. That habit ended today. That evening, I sent a brief text to Sarah and David. I've upgraded the security system and locks on the house today. If you need to stop by in the future, please call ahead so I can be home to open the door. I didn't wait for a reply. I put my phone on silent, poured a glass of red wine, and enjoyed the absolute quiet of my fortified sanctuary. 3 days later, my new security system proved its worth. I was in the backyard wearing my gardening gloves and pruning the rose bushes when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a notification from the front door camera. I pulled off a glove, tapped the screen, and watched the live feed. Sarah was standing on my porch. She wasn't alone. Brenda was right beside her holding a large platter covered in aluminum foil, while Sarah gripped a heavy tote bag full of party supplies. I watched as Sarah confidently pulled her old silver key from her purse. She stepped up to the door, looked down at the handle, and froze. She aggressively poked the sleek digital keypad, searching for a keyhole that no longer existed. "I don't understand, the lock is completely gone," Sarah muttered, her voice picked up clearly by the camera's microphone. "Well, punch in the code." Brenda huffed, shifting the heavy platter. "David's brother will be at your house any minute, and your apartment is too small for this lunch. We need your mother's patio." They had planned to host Brenda's family gathering at my house without even asking me. Sarah pressed the doorbell button aggressively. I tapped the microphone icon on my screen. "Hello, Sarah." "Hello, Brenda." My voice echoed from the porch speaker. Sarah jumped, looking up at the camera lens. "Mom, open the door. We brought food. We need to set up the patio for lunch." "I'm afraid today doesn't work for me," I said, smoothly, leaning against my garden fence. "I sent you a message about the locks, Sarah. I'm currently busy in the back and not receiving guests." "Mom, stop playing games," Sarah snapped. "Brenda's family is on their way. We can't fit everyone in my dining room. That sounds like a logistical issue you should have considered before inviting people to a house you don't own," I replied. "Have a lovely lunch at your apartment. Goodbye." I toggled the microphone off and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The following Saturday, I kept my usual routine. I drove to the upscale farmers market a few towns over to pick up fresh sourdough and organic vegetables. The morning air was crisp, and I was enjoying the stroll until I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Brenda. She wasn't holding any shopping bags. She had clearly spotted my car and followed me in, and she had brought 2 of her country club friends with her for an audience. "Audrey," Brenda said, projecting her voice so the people at the nearby artisanal cheese stand would hear. "I simply must speak with you. Sarah is devastated. How could you lock your own daughter out of her childhood home?" Her friends folded their arms, looking at me with manufactured disappointment. They expected me to shrink to feel the heavy pressure of public shame and quickly apologize to keep the peace. I finished paying the vendor for my tomatoes, tucked the change into my wallet, and turned to face them fully. "I didn't lock her out of her childhood home, Brenda," I replied, my voice perfectly pitched, calm, clear, and unbothered. "I simply stopped allowing her to use my home as a free event space for your family. Brenda's confident smirk faltered. She's your daughter. Family helps family. Exactly. I nodded pleasantly. Which is why I'm so glad she has a wonderful mother-in-law like you. I've supported Sarah and David financially for years, paying their cell phones, their car insurance, and the credit card they use to fund your spa trips. The two friends blinked, exchanging a sudden sharp look. Brenda's face flushed a deep, mottled red. That was a misunderstanding. Oh, there's no misunderstanding. I smiled, adjusting my tote bag. I've retired from being their financial safety net. If you feel so strongly about family helping family, I suggest you hand them your credit card next time they invite you to a luxury boutique. Have a wonderful weekend, ladies. I walked away, leaving Brenda stuttering in the middle of the crowded market, her audience now looking at her with highly raised eyebrows. The silence lasted for nearly a week before they changed tactics. On a rainy Tuesday evening, the doorbell chimed. My camera showed Sarah and David standing on the porch. No Brenda, no party platters. They both looked genuinely exhausted. I unlocked the door from my phone and let them in. They sat on my living room sofa while I took my usual armchair. Sarah pulled a thick leather-bound folder from her tote bag. Her previous anger had been replaced by a carefully practiced mask of deep concern. Mom, we've been doing a lot of thinking. Sarah began using a soft, placating tone. With inflation in this big house, it just isn't practical or safe for you to live here all alone. David nodded weakly. We want to help Audrey. We could move in here. We'd rent out our apartment to clear our debts, and we'd be right here to take care of you. I watched Sarah slide the leather folder across the coffee table toward me. I opened it. Inside was a printed floor plan of my house. The master bedroom, the room I had shared with my husband for 30 years, was labeled Sarah and David. My name was written in tiny print over the small, cramped office next to the laundry room downstairs. I flipped the page. It was a breakdown of how my pension and savings would cover the house's utilities, property taxes, and groceries, while their rental income would go exclusively toward paying off their personal credit cards. A care plan. I asked, keeping my face entirely blank. It's a win-win, Sarah insisted, regaining her confidence. You don't have to worry about maintaining the property, and we take care of you as you get older. Plus, Brenda could come stay in the guest room on weekends to help out. They were planning a complete hostile takeover of my space, packaging it as geriatric care so they could live rent-free and host Brenda on my dime. I closed the leather folder gently and pushed it back across the coffee table. I am 65 years old. Sarah, not 90, I said, my voice carrying a definitive sharp edge. My health is excellent. My mind is sharp, and I maintain this property just fine on my own. Sarah tensed. Mom, we're trying to be practical. You're trying to be opportunistic, I corrected her without raising my voice. You are drowning in debt because you prioritize impressing Brenda over living within your means. Now, you want to confiscate my master bedroom, demote me to the laundry hallway, and use my pension to fund your lifestyle. David put his head in his hands. He knew I was right. If you're going to be this stubborn, you're going to end up entirely alone. Sarah snapped, fake sweetness vanishing. Don't expect me to bring your future grandchildren around if you treat us like landlords instead of family. It was the classic emotional blackmail. Years ago, that threat would have made me cave. Today, it sounded like a hollow echo. I stood up. I manage my finances perfectly well, and I manage my life just fine. The door is right there. David stood up immediately, looking thoroughly defeated. Come on, Sarah. We shouldn't have tried this. Sarah stood her ground for a second, glaring at me, waiting for me to break, to apologize, to offer a check to make the tension go away. I just looked at her, serene and unbothered. Realizing she had absolutely no leverage left, she snatched the folder off the table, spun on her heel, and marched toward the door. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, the smart lock instantly engaging with a solid, satisfying thud. I walked into my kitchen, poured myself a glass of iced water, and took a deep breath. The house felt lighter. The air was entirely mine. 6 months have passed since I changed my locks and handed my daughter back her responsibilities. Sarah and David never moved in. Stripped of my financial safety net, they had to drastically downsize. Brenda's luxury spa days abruptly ended, and Sarah's passive-aggressive social media posts about toxic family no longer reach my peaceful porch. Recently, David visited alone, bringing my favorite coffee beans. He admitted they are finally seeing a financial planner. He didn't ask for money, and I didn't offer any. I simply poured him a cup and listened. My home is now the true refuge it was always meant to be. No invasive accessories, no hostile floor plans, just quiet mornings, gardening, and absolute tranquility. I've learned that setting boundaries doesn't require tears or massive arguments. It just requires decisive action. We often shrink in our own homes to keep the peace, allowing ourselves to become endless resources. However, true respect doesn't demand financial submission. Saying no will always anger those who exploited your silence, but the resulting peace is priceless. You cannot force adults to mature, but you are the absolute owner of the keys to your door. Deciding who walks through it is your greatest freedom.